John Regalado is the former creative director of the YouTube channel Jubilee, known for popularizing the 1 verse 20 debate format, along with other kinds of videos. This is our conversation. We'll start with my favorite question.
Let's do it.
Which is, how did you come across my channel, and what prompted you to reach out?
Yeah, well, you, for a period of time, I know that you've kind of gone cold on this self-identifier, but you called yourself a radical centrist for a time.
Now I'm dark centrist. But to be fair, it's the same underlying philosophy. It's just a different label.
The circles of the internet that I traverse, are very kind of centrist heavy. It's a political philosophy or a political approach that I find to resonate with me personally. So that was probably how I came across you first. And then, yeah, I just started watching your interviews, which I found to be very interesting. And, oh yeah, what happened was there was that fascist moment in Surrounded, and you had a response to that, and sort of this idea of, how the left is against platforming fringe ideas on the right, but you pointed out the contradiction that the right seems to have almost gamified platforming the fringe ideas on the left as sort of a staple strategy of gaining public support. And I thought that was really interesting and pretty, I thought that was a strong argument that seemed valid.
Yeah, well, actually, someone else pointed that out to me. That's an insight I got from, I think, one of my, I don't know if they're in the Patreon or if it was a comment on YouTube or something, but someone pointed that out in a discussion. And yeah, I was like, I had the same thought. That's exactly the issue. So, okay, so if you resonate with some of that, radical centrist idea, we should take the ideas of the far right and the far left and synthesize them, or at least acknowledge the kernels of truth on either side while pushing back against the freaks. Surely that means you are a fascist yourself then, correct? Because obviously everyone who wants to have a dialogue or is willing to have a conversation with people who are far right must be a fascist themselves, right? How do you... Because I get that criticism quite often.
Well,
what is your response to that? Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of, maybe I'm not a radical centrist, but maybe I would maybe call myself a radical empath, which is a very cringy label, but let's go with it.
Hey, by the way, I'm wearing the Jubilee.
Oh,
hoodie.
hell yeah.
So,
dude, that's old. That's
go.
Old Jubilee.
Oh yeah, I was OG.
But I would say, having gone through my own personal transformations of thought, deconstructing the religion I grew up in, I think just absorbing more scientific knowledge and just knowledge of the world, traveling to many countries, and witnessing a ton of different walks of life. I am drawn to an empathetic lens to see human behavior. And that's not to say, I think all human behavior should be permitted and we should just sort of have this, loosey-goosey idea of laws and social norms and morality and moral relativism. I'm not in favor of that. But I do think that when you see extreme behavior, which our world is very abundantly filled with right now, the best approach to understanding it, and probably the best approach to dealing with it, is by first understanding it. And so that is that's been my philosophy as a creative. And so, my time at Jubilee has been dedicated to engaging with people who have somewhat extreme, controversial, polarizing views. And that's just a task that I enjoy.
How do you walk the line between understanding a belief and sanitizing it? Because the argument is, well, you platform someone who has an extreme belief. And, if you stage it as a debate, the very structure of the debate makes it seem as though both sides are equally valid, which is why they're worthy of debate. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that?
No, and I think that's pretty interesting. And I think even the term platforming didn't even really exist when I kind of set out to start this kind of work. But over my years of kind of helping Jubilee produce middle ground and similar formats, that became more and more of a term and a criticism that obviously we received directly. And so, there was at Jubilee, it's made up of many people, and so there's a ton of opinions about it. When I was a creative director, I had my own philosophy. Jason has his own philosophy, so I can really only speak for myself, and it's always evolving. But I think I generally am a little bit dismissive of the concerns around platforming in today's uh, current political ecosystem because, and you and I have kind of talked about this term, like radical ideas have breached containment on multiple levels. And so, I think it was the Hillary kind of Trump years where there was this like, and if you actually go to the Hillary deplorables comment back in, this is kind of like the infamous comment that really ignited a fire in MAGA. She talks about how, a lot of Trump supporters are racist, Islamophobic, yada, yada, yada. And then she kind of talks about how Trump has elevated their websites and these websites that had 8,000 followers or, visitors now have 8 million. And so that was kind of where this argument of like, oh, you're elevating these ideas um, first came into existence or maybe was mainstreamed. And I feel like I've witnessed that kind of attitude on the left, specifically, further and further, like isolate the left from engaging with the world. Um, it's encouraged a kind of inward policing on the left that has sort of further silenced people within that camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I think platforming is a legitimate concern. And yeah, maybe like Oxford University shouldn't be just inviting the craziest, fringiest ideas into their debates for the sake of it or for the clicks. Like, surely there are going to be some realms in society where, yeah, we have some standards because we're aiming for a certain goal for these conversations to achieve. But I think in mainstream mass audience culture right now, you're doing yourself no favors with this platforming attitude. Because you're either creating a vacuum where your opinion just isn't influential because you're not participating in cultural discourse. And not only that, you're kind of sending a signal of like, I'm scared or frightened of the other's ideas.
Yeah, that's the main one. It seems like it's like if you can't debate this, it seems like it's because you're acknowledging there's some truth to it here that you're worried about, and your only solution is to censor it.
And I think
And
there's certain areas of well, yeah, I mean, iron. What's the phrase? Like iron makes
iron
iron.
sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron, and I think that's really true. And so, like, when you have a big tent, so let's just play with this left-right kind of political binary. Something Trump has done very well, and I think he deserves some credit for, or his movement or coalition deserves credit for, is his ideas and his coalition and his platform has evolved. And so Trump 1.0 was, I would say, it leaned primarily on this kind of like stronger Christian nationalist, more just traditional kind of conservative coalition. And that was, like he eked by in that election. Um, and so it wasn't as broadly appealing as this recent Trump election was, where he then kind of brought in with JD Vance and these kind of tech bros, like they allowed kind of an open experimentation of like what ideas belong in MAGA and don't belong in MAGA. And obviously there's this whole cult of personality aspect to Trump that's unique and quite strong. But it's still evolving. Whereas I feel like if you look on the left, certain social attitudes or certain ways of talking about issues have remained pretty static, and I think even become increasingly myopic for the last decade.
Sure. Well, and there was this clip of Bernie Sanders just recently who talked about, he said Trump did a good job on the border, essentially.
And he's getting eaten alive right now.
Yeah, right. But it's like, to exactly your point, is pointing out that we should have secure borders. First off, having secure borders says nothing about your immigration policy in terms of like, do we let people in? How many people do we let in? It's just, we should have borders to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he said that, it's like, that's exactly the kind of, you know, dynamism, I want to say, or rejuvenation of like, hey, you can be the reasonable left here, and you can say basic common sense things, and yet there's an orthodoxy that will come down on him so hard. You know, you're accepting right-wing framing and Republican framing and all this. And yeah, and again, so much of the criticism from people on the left, like I've heard Crystal Ball and Breaking Points make this criticism of like, you know, like, oh, well, talking about trans kids or talking about trans issues or talking about, you know, this and that. It's like you're buying into Republican framing. It's Republicans who are constantly talking about trans stuff to move away from economic issues. And that mentality, it's just, it prevents you from diagnosing the real problem. You know, like DEI, a lot of people on the left will say, well, DEI is the creation of liberals, you know, like neoliberal corporate consultants made up DEI. It's like, no. Those corporate consultants are parasitic grifters who took DEI and made it profitable and, you know, bled companies to teach their employees how to be less racist. But the fundamental principles of DEI come from the universities. Like it's, you know, intersectionality and, you know, a lot of critical theory stuff. To say that that's a creation of neoliberalism and not like the excesses of progressivism, it prevents you from diagnosing the problem. And that's why you have progressives criticizing Bernie for just acknowledging, hey, we had a crisis on the border and it's good that it was secured. Because it's just like, that does not prevent you from being able to say, and we should still have immigration. Immigration is good.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can control the conversation in the way that liberals want to. You know, I think liberals like to, or they would prefer to have control of the framing. And so when it comes to trans rights, you know, I think they would like to engage with that topic less because, hey, the rights of these people is not up for debate. I think that's a valid argument. But at a certain point, there are enough people in the country who are very concerned about the implications of too open-mindedness towards gender fluidity, a world with kind of a even broader sexual revolution in it. And so you do have to engage with those people if you want to win in the war of ideas. And so my attitude really is, I think you should expose yourself to as many ideas as you can cautiously. And if you listen to an extreme view on the left, you should probably kind of inoculate yourself from too extreme of thinking by listening to an extreme idea on the right. And I think everything is just about balance. And if you understand both sides, there's probably a better chance that you can find opportunities to harmonize some of their shared interests. And so, you know, I think a lot of people who are in MAGA share a lot of the same values as trans people. But a lot of those people in MAGA need to be offered maybe a different or an easier to understand framing around trans identity. And if it's just, you know, nope, we're not going to talk about that, or even more radical, like Antifa kind of protesting, those people are probably going to be like, oh, they might come to the conclusion like there's actually something fundamentally too radical about anybody who's trans. And then they kind of close the door on that identity entirely. And so I think that's kind of what played out in the last few years.
That That's exactly what happens. Where it's like, well, if you are against 13-year-olds getting gender surgery, that means you're against civil rights, because trans rights are civil rights and trans kids need to be protected. So it's like, wait a minute. So if you express doubt on the most extreme, part of what you could just call like trans ideology or whatever, exactly that, it makes you question the whole thing. And the point and I've said this before, is like the biggest barrier to acceptance of transgender adults is the constant association of the right of adults to do with what they want with their body, with children, should be allowed to do this, and also, without letting their parents know and all that stuff. And if a child expresses a, desire to be the opposite gender and the parents say no, those parents can get in trouble and get their kids taken away, which has happened in Canada, and in California as well. It's like, that's demented. And then it just says, you know what, we're just going to say screw all of this. And to Marjorie Taylor Greene was on Tim Dillon. Marjorie Taylor Greene is just straight up a left-wing populist in terms of economics. There's so many.
Her evolution is fascinating. Right?
Yeah, and I love Marjorie Taylor Greene at this point. Precisely because
but you didn't expect yourself to say that.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. Yeah. And precisely because she is saying like, oh, damn, she's not just sucking the president, sucking his ego, and not just sucking up to him, sucking up to him. Yeah, right. Yeah, correct. Yes, we'll use algo-friendly language from now on for the next 83 days. But like she said so explicitly, like, I didn't come from any established thing where I had to go through these conservative networks. I came in as a populist and said, I'm voting, which means she's free to go like, yeah, actually all these left-wing Bernie people who make points about like, yeah, we can't afford homes and all that, that's a valid point. Or like the people who are criticizing Israel, like, actually you can be pro-Palestinian and not be like an evil person, like, a lot of the MAGA people will say. All these people are pro-terrorist or whatever. And so like that flexibility in thinking is big. And it's like, I want, to the degree that I have any impact or influence in the discourse at all, I want to foster an environment where, yeah, like, hey, do we all agree we should have a secure border? Do we agree that adults should be able to do what they want with their body? Do we agree that, immigration is fine if controlled? And, do we agree on all these things? Because we can disagree on abortion and all this other shit, but on the things we all agree on, can we all unite there and then make political progress on that and then go back to bitching about the things we don't agree on?
And I just generally kind of tend to lean, I have a little bit more of like this Ezra Klein philosophy, and you kind of see him getting kind of sent through the meat grinder right now because of the article he wrote about Charlie Kirk, and how Charlie Kirk in his mind was doing politics the right way.
Right.
And I think by that, he just meant that he was engaging with politics through, like a discussion based approach. But I genuinely, politics is, what the cliche is, like, it's the art of, the possible. Politicians are constantly figuring out ways to offer honey to different groups with different and often conflicting interests in order to forward kind of some shared goal, but not only that, to offer a certain sense of societal stability. And this is something that I find quite appealing in the algorithmic, the algorithm driven era. It's like algorithms are very destabilizing. We see that happening in our culture. And so there needs to be some sort of movement to popularize, extreme tolerance at times, and radical pragmatism in the interest of a stable society where everyone can flourish. Trans people, Christian nationalist people, yada, yada, yada. And I know that there's that, tolerance can only go so far, to the point where you're tolerating the people that want to kill you. But I think I would challenge a lot of people who try and whip out that paradox, is like, but you don't actually know where that line is. Just because you know like if you know the market's going to crash, if you don't call it at the right moment, then you're not a genius. Anybody can say, hey, the market's going to crash at some point. And it's the same thing with tolerance. Like, hey, if we tolerate too much, then we could undo society. But I think it's easy to look at society right now and be like, I actually think there's probably not enough tolerance going on right now. And I think the murder of Charlie Kirk is the most material example of that. So yeah, I know all these things are true, but it's like we have to be willing to kind of try and keep the marble in the center enough, you know?
Yeah, well, and the thing, yeah, the because you know the issue is, well, this is all kumbaya nonsense that doesn't merge with human nature. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Carl Schmitt, the friend enemy distinction. I increasingly hear that being put like, these people are my enemy and that's it. And there is some truth to the idea of like, it's not a we need to have tolerance for the most extreme. In some sense, it's like we need to, you know, the middle 70 to 80% needs to, you know, be on the same page. The extremes on either fringes should be marginalized and should be, you know, socially shamed and all that. Like, shame and, you know, refusal to engage with certain people is necessary. Like that, you know, there is. This is one of the questions: is like, you know, where is the line on what topics should be discussed and debated, right? Because if someone wants to debate whether or not adults should be able to have certain relations with young children, well, actually, no, that would be just, no, that should not be debated. And like, if Jubilee were to host a, you know, middle ground, like people who are against, you know, adults and children doing things and people who are for it, like, that is bad. That would be the meme realized of, you are literally just platforming this and making it seem valid. And so in some sense, that shit should be censored and marginalized and mocked more so than like, well, let's debate this intellectually.
Right. But I think, I mean, and again, everyone at Jubilee has different opinions about these issues and would have to speak to their own individual opinions. But media itself is an interesting tool. And for me, I think it offers multiple avenues of insight. One of them is observation. And I think observation is really powerful. And I don't mean like surveillance, but I mean like an interview with somebody is an incredible opportunity to observe how they think and how they behave, and to see yourself within that behavior and to see some of the overlap. And so I agree, we shouldn't host a debate. I don't think a piece of content that hosts a debate between, you know, people who have inappropriate sex drives towards vulnerable people.
Yeah.
Trying to keep you.
Yes, thank you.
I'll go speak. Yes, we shouldn't host a debate on whether or not acting upon that urge is valid. However, a conversation with those people could still be valuable.
I agree. Yes, and I agree with that. And
I think what a lot of people have an appetite for is they want you at the very top of the video to be like, these people are evil or monsters and they're totally wrong, but now we're gonna like, or even there's this vigilante media where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna find these people, we're gonna like punch them in the face.
Yeah, that's demented.
Them.
That is like that is just that is finding a justification to like entertain your most psychopathic desires. Like, oh, I can go up and just beat these people, even though, like, yes, these people are bad, but some of the people, I know exactly what you're talking about, the vigilante type videos where it's like,
oh, it's insane.
Yeah, and some of the people they like lure in are themselves like clearly mentally disabled, and then they fucking like punch these people. It's like, this is just sick and twisted. This is not benefiting anyone or whatnot.
Yeah, and it's some kind of strange, I mean, projection. Like there's going to be books written about all these different genres. AI is going to categorize human behavior in the next, you know, few decades in ways we can't even understand, and media is going to be one of the primary ways that it does it. But I think what I find, something I'm drawn to though, is seeing the overlap between yourself And I think this is kind of like an ego death state of mind, or something like that, where it's like, if you can see some of the shared humanity that you have between somebody who has done something that you find horrifying, whether that be murder, whether that be, you know, war crimes, unacceptable behavior, that can be incredibly humbling, because it's like everybody's pain is your pain. Everybody's struggle is your struggle. And the other truth is that our deepest, darkest thoughts, our deepest, darkest actions, we do not publicize. And so if everybody was truly forced to walk with their worst deed they ever did written on their chest or on their forehead, like, how would that change everything?
Mm.
And so I really do think you have to approach a lot of these subjects with some humility and a willingness to be like, I'm not trying to say this is okay, but I am deeply trying to understand what led to this. And I am also deeply trying to understand if there is still some good within this person that I also, feel or see within myself. And I think that that's kind of a very Christian thing. And maybe one of the last remaining Christian sort of philosophies that's kind of stuck with me. But yeah, that's a task that I find appealing. And so if that manifests in some absurd kind of discussions that are framed as debates, I understand people's frustration. But that doesn't give them permission to write obscene, crazy, hateful things in the form of comments. And if you participate in that kind of dogpiling, you are degrading your own humanity, bit by bit. And so yeah, dehumanization is a real concern I have.
Are you a Lex Friedman fan?
Oh yeah, I love Lex. I mean,
Yeah.
I also love some of the jokes. I think we should poke fun at everybody. And I like some of the ways that he's been sort of lampooned, but I think he's great.
I think people, the way I see it, because you have what you're describing is the, like, I don't mean this in the, like the kumbaya, like truly we need to have empathy for like even the most extreme people. And Lex gets kind of dogpiled on that. But like, you need people like that. And I would say that the reason that personalities differ to the degree that they do in a given population is precisely because you need a balance of people who are like that and then people who might have a different approach, in the same sense that not everyone can be an engineer. If everyone was an artist, then society would run well, but there'd be nothing to live for because we'd have no culture. And if everyone was an engineer, if everyone was I'm reversing it. If everyone was an engineer, society would run well, but we'd have no culture and nothing to live for, and the movies would suck. If everyone was an artist, we'd have great music and all that, but our society would fall apart. The fact that we have people who are like, I'm actually interested in doing engineering, and some people are like, I'm actually interested in doing whatever, some more like people-focused thing. Like, both of them benefit, despite the fact that neither of them would want to do the other person's job, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's good that you have different personalities, and having the mindset of like, we need to have the humanization and empathy and kind of, no matter what, look for the commonality there. I do think that's necessary. On the flip side, there is a practical thing of, we live in a democracy and we have to energize, 51% of the electorate in order to do certain things. Do the ends justify the means? And I keep hearing this concept of, well, you want to do the right thing. Like, if you want to pass a law that allows transgender adults to continue being able to get hormone therapy or whatever, you have to win. And so like, you have to engage in more raw mimetic warfare tactics to energize 51% of the vote, just to be able to do the right thing that actually produces the outcome that's positive. And there's a point at which principles like that you're describing can seem to become pacifism, where then you just end up getting steamrolled by the people who are more operating by the friend-enemy distinction.
Yeah. Well, and
what do you have to say to that? Or what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I think there are moments in history where I think people were forced to come to that realization. Let's go with a cliche. I'm full of cliches. Abraham Lincoln, Civil War. Okay, there's an economic reliance on slavery in the South that cannot be tolerated morally. And I think Abraham Lincoln knew this privately, but also it cannot be like negotiated. Like, we're not just going to slowly negotiate away slave labor, because an entire society built upon that is going to rely upon it, and they're going to lash out at anybody who tries to take that away from them. So there was this, it was that kind of, Joker Batman moment, like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And like, bloodshed had to occur. And I actually went to Gettysburg. My wife and I are kind of history nerds. So we went to Gettysburg for like a sort of second honeymoon over the summer. We stayed at like a
Nice.
bed and breakfast, like a cute little
Very romantic.
bed and breakfast in Gettysburg. And then we like drove through the battlefields. And I actually, the same way Israel has been so proactive about funding trips to visit Israel, I feel like America should do a similar kind of thing where it's like, hey, are you a high school senior? Here's a free trip to go to Gettysburg. Because first of all, it'd be great for the economy there. But then second of all, visiting these battlefields and just, ruminating on the Civil War is a truly important thing to do. I mean, Ken Burns' Civil War is one of the most important documentaries. He's a giant in documentary filmmaking, and it's such an important, sober look at history. And so, yes, that was an instance where it really felt like politics tried as much as it could to avoid the reality of bloodshed. And the North, I mean, McClellan, I think, he did everything he could to not fight that war. It was like, okay, we're going to camp out here and we're not going to invade this town, or we're not going to invade here.
He got fired, right?
Eventually.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just when you relive that battle and you kind of look through it, it's the North dragging their feet over and over and over. Like, oh, do we really have to go to war? Do we really have to die? Do I really have to send these men into battle so that tens of thousands of them are going to get slaughtered? And then the South is just like, fuck y'all, like, we're ready to, and they just like are beating them at every turn. But that was truly the cost of changing that moral paradigm and ridding this country of, a true moral failing, which was slave labor. And obviously it didn't happen overnight. Like, that had to, and it continues today. Like the poisonous residual effects of a society built on, like an ethnically set up form of forced labor, it's still in us. We feel it, and we see it come up in our politics and literally in our geography. And so we're still dealing with that, but that was an example of something where it was we cannot tolerate this. And so I think there are moments like that. When I look at our culture today, and again, I could be wrong, and like, we're all going to go to battle and like fucking die. And like, this video will be a testament to my own naivete.
We shall see.
But I truly do not think that the differences that exist in our culture right now, between the Charlie Kirks and the far left people in Portland who have ski masks on and are like showing up wherever they can to stir up, some drama. I actually don't think the things that those people want are too distant to find a stable middle ground that's appealing enough. I don't think that embodies the full values of both of those sides, but that would be appealing enough to not kind of push them into warfare.
I half agree. I have a middle ground between your point and another point, which is there are psychopaths on either end of the extreme. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot. It's a very small. I mean, psychopathy is rare, so it's a small minority. And then around that, there's some ideologically possessed true believers. So like between the Charlie Kirks and the Antifas, those individuals I don't know. I think there are fundamental, just like they want to have just completely different views. You know, they've fundamentally different moral systems. It's like you've seen, you know, a super conservative Muslim and a super progressive transgender person or a gay person or whatever. But to your point, I would say the percentage of people who are like that is very small. And so it's not that those people aren't fundamentally opposed and are enemies. I think they are. I think we are being led to believe that more people fall into that than there really are, right? Because like I have friends who are very left wing and who on paper are very left wing, and I know people who are, and I have friends, and then I also know people who are very, very far right, and it's like I hear them and I talk to them about different issues, and it's like, well, I actually do. We even these people could unite on some key things and on the important things, you know, like being able to afford houses and all that, and not live in a dystopian hellhole of wealth inequality and phones being shoved in front of your faces by your own addicted hands, and, you know, just having your brain fried and all that. Like, there is a better world, and most people do want that. And even those, even though the extremes might be irreconcilable, like a very small percentage on either side, there's so many, I agree, like there's a lot of Nick Fuentes fans and a lot of Hassan Piker fans who actually overlap on like 80% of the important things.
But here's sort of what I think. Like, what's different, or what I think is different between maybe like Civil War days and now, is that there was something so fundamental that changed the reality. Like, there were people who lived in states that like demanded slave labor and required it. And then there were people who were against it, but the whole system was sort of contaminated by that. And so their ideas were kind of founded in that. The ideas in today's world, like, you can put two far left people in a room and find like a million things that they agree on and disagree on. And the same thing with Nick Fuentes fans. Like, I don't think those people in those camps are all that monolithic. And I think those camps are just the product of like the phones, this algorithmic driven society we have. And I don't even really, you know, I don't point the finger of blame at like content creators and this is again why that book, Algo Speak, I can't recommend it enough, but he has kind of this like sentence where it's like, you know, creators are sort of kind of accomplices, but ultimately like the algorithms are what are doing this. And so a lot of these social differences, I think, or these culture war issues are a little bit of a mirage. But what they are capitalizing on or sort of harvesting is this discontent that we all feel kind of in this economic system. And the discontent we feel is also exacerbated by the algorithms, because people who think that they're really like poor, some of them truly are, but some of them actually think they have it worse off than they really do. And that's because they're probably staring at really wealthy people on their phones all of the time. And so all of our perception is being distorted by these phones. That is really the task at hand. But I think we have this opportunity, and this is actually something I really like about MAGA, is like, I do think the Elons of the worlds and the Zuckerbergs of the worlds and the Tim Cooks of the worlds do need to have some sort of relationship with Washington, D.C. I think they should be having more transparent discussions, but we need to figure out how to tweak this algorithmic driven society that we have.
Yeah, the techno-feudal structure that we're in.
Yeah, and kind of like figure out ways to stimulate our better nature, to create kind of just like a sense of contentment in people. And some of that sounds like a little bit like social engineering and a little strange, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's like our perception of each other and our circumstances is super warped, and figuring out how to like better calibrate that is a huge part of the problem.
Yeah, we should have, in the same way that if you want to build a building in the United States, you have to abide by a building code. there should be algorithm codes. If you're going to design a social media algorithm, you need to, for example, have 20% of the weighting be on content on which people who are or like progressive or conservative agree on. This is something that I think Tristan Harris pointed out, of like, algorithms are very good at categorizing people, right? Every individual is part of all these different demos, right? So they know for a fact if, I'm whatever, right-leaning and someone else is left-leaning, like they know that. Okay, so part of the building codes of an algorithm needs to be, anytime there's an unlikely agreement between like a conservative or a progressive, they like the same tweet, that should be boosted. Why do they like the same? What about this is unifying rather than here's the most divisive thing that is going to cause the most rage bait, right? And, that's just, it's like you said, well, it's like social engineering. It's like, we're already being socially engineered. So let's
figure out how to do it better.
It's like, let's get the right practices in. Put constraints on it.
What is the outcome we want? And, there was that period of time where it's like, facts care more about your feelings and all that jazz. I actually think feelings are incredibly important in this situation. And it's like, how can we figure out how to make these algorithms like build up the feelings that we want to feel? Connectedness, social harmony, more positive feelings. And that a lot of people have pointed this out, but the ethnic cleansing that happened in Myanmar I think it was around 2016, 2017. Essentially, there was a genocide in Myanmar, and historians have been kind of like looking at this more closely, and it was very clearly fomented by the presence of Facebook in that society. And so that's one of the clearest instances where you can really just zoom into a part of the world, a region of the world, where algorithms had this tremendously devastating effect and turned people against each other in a more aggressive way than they would have in the absence of Facebook. Not to say that hate wasn't there, it just augmented that hate or made the problems or the motivating factors for the violence appear to be that much more urgent and necessary. And so, I mean, it's crazy to me that Zuckerberg's still just like kind of like walking around. Like there has yet to be any kind of like true reckoning of like what went on there, and how do we prevent that? And I just think our learnings are a little too slow. But that is just so obviously happening everywhere all at once. And Jack Dorsey, the former Twitter CEO, he had kind of proposed this idea of like choosing your algorithm, having algorithms competing in a marketplace and people opting for certain algorithms that had produced kind of an outcome that they prefer. The same way people could cut. But I mean, you do kind of wonder, like, will junk food always prevail? Like, is it just too powerful for the human will?
Interesting. Well, I mean, look, I talked to someone, I have to confirm this stat. They said basically they did a poll on TikTok users, and it was something like over 50% of TikTok users wished TikTok did not exist. And it shows the gap between stated and revealed preferences of like, this is what I want for myself. This is how and then this is what actually I do. Your point about junk food is like, health food's a big market. Health food's making a comeback. Gyms are popular. If the conditions are in place for, that are conducive to what people want, truly, not like what I want to act like, because again, what you state you want is, I would say, more important. Or society should be fulfilling what people state they want more than just what they want behaviorally. Because if I give you cocaine, you'll do fucking cocaine, right? It's like, well, then you must want cocaine. It's like, no, that's just that. That's my human nature getting the best of me. But if we had a society that turned off social media for 4 hours a day or something like that, like in China or whatever they do, they limit like social media. There's an aspect of that. I have to look more into that. It's like, yeah, you know what?
Or just age gating it. I know that that's not popular with some people.
Oh my God. Bo Burnham says, he's like, I don't think you should be able to be on the internet freely until you're 18. I don't care if that makes me a Quaker or something. I just don't. And Bo Burnham is like,
Yeah,
the most.
Taylor Lorenz would take issue with that.
Well, Taylor Lorenz, I will have to interview her and discuss
Her influence is growing, and it's interesting because I really didn't think a lot of people would defend phones in schools until I kind of was exposed to her thinking. But
Oh my God, yeah, that's so annoying. Like, well, the reason that kids are sad is because of climate change. It's like,
well,
maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
I mean that's part of it.
Yeah, but you
they're
cannot
also,
tell me. It's like it's Instagram. It's seeing all their friends doing it. It's like it's basic. Just anyone who's used social media and been on TikTok for an hour and realize like, oh my God, I just wasted an hour of my life. Like you don't feel good after that. And to say, well, actually, really that. It's climate change that people are worried about. It's like, no, it's the melting of people's brains. Anyway, that's it.
But it's such a powerful economic force. I mean, here's kind of the thing. It's like,
yeah,
you and I right now are participating in this media ecosystem. It's becoming a way of life, and it's becoming a livelihood for us. It's been my livelihood. I assume it's yours to a certain degree. This we have to resist, I think, some of the scapegoat mentality. Storming the gates of Silicon Valley with pitchforks and, beheading all of these billionaires. It's just the result is going to be like the French Revolution. It's like, okay, let's replace these bad billionaires with other kind of crazy radical thinkers.
It'd be very bad. Neither of us endorse that.
Yeah. I fear sort of just that, like the pot boiling over moment, how that manifests. I think that's the thing I fear the most right now, because I just know that there won't really be answers there, and like I really just like am pleading and hoping that there can be a moment similar to kind of the Constitutional Convention, where like you had these incredibly wealthy, influential, very idealistic, very privileged people engaging in a worthwhile social, thought experiment of like, how do we program government to be better than a monarchy? And up to that point, monarchy made a lot of sense. It's not like it was inherently evil. It actually was probably the best way to organize a society, because you just needed centralized decision making for communication's sake. And then that kind of created like mad kings, and like at a certain point it would crumble. Democracy was kind of empowered by literacy and mass communication. Journalism sort of sprung out of that. And so we're at this point now where like there's this similar parallel evolution of communication and societal organization, and they're both kind of in crisis at the same time. And I worry about the health of someone like Elon Musk. Like, I don't know if he's in a state of mind to participate in dialogues like these, but I would love to see dialogues with the most influential people where it's like, okay, how do we approach the alignment issue? And maybe we need to draft like a bill of human meta rights, what are the
or an internet
rights?
bill of rights. Yeah.
What
second
is a
constitutional
human's
convention.
right to their data? Should they be monetarily compensated for when their data is leveraged against them? Because all of us have been sort of just giving our data so that we can kind of be further enslaved.
Yeah. We're reading it's called Why Liberalism Failed. We're reading this book in the book club.
Oh yeah, the book club.
Yes, the Ivory Tower book club. And one of the points is just the default assumptions we make in society of innovate. There's no ambition and hedonism. Like, you do as thou wilt. Basically, you're an autonomous individual. Pursue whatever ends you desire. And like Facebook is a technological extension of that underlying philosophy, right? And monetizing data and extracting data and using it. It's like, well, this is just, no one said we couldn't do it. So until someone says we can't legally, we're just going to keep doing it. And there is an open question of, well, we need to reformulate, like in the age of hyper novelty. That's what Brett Weinstein calls it, and I think it's good. It's like the rate of change is so much that this idea of like, well, innovation's good. We need innovation. Innovation is the key to, human progress and all that. It's like, correct, but what if it's simply a matter of diminishing returns? And at a certain point, the amount of too much innovation is a bad thing. And so this idea of like, well, we don't want to restrict AI use or whatever. Like, how dare someone suggest we make it illegal to make AI videos right now, even though we can make like hyper realistic CCTV footage of real people committing crimes they didn't commit. Like maybe we just don't allow that until we decide as a society how to move forward, rather than just keep the model of, well, move fast and do things until someone tells you not to.
Move fast and create.
Move fast and break things.
Cause genocide.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at a certain point, the breaking things is like the things you're breaking
can't be fixed.
This isn't like a door or
correct.
A bunch of scooters like cluttered on the corner of an intersection. This is like societal upheaval. And I think I would be very cautious about over regulating AI. I think there's valid concerns there, because China is going to be as aggressive as they can in developing it. And so there should be this healthy competition between world powers, so that like there isn't, we aren't all just forced to conform to one superpower that unlocks, whatever our robot overlord will be at one time. But there just should be some kind of public discussion with truly influential people where it's like, okay, is there one thing we could introduce? Like, is there one rule we could experiment with for the next year? And maybe that's that it's illegal for an elected official to post artificially generated imagery, or it's illegal for a journalist to use AI in any way, or for any site that's categorized as news to participate with like AI generated imagery. Like there needs to be a willingness, and a normalization.
And there's all kinds of nitpicking that you can do, and because what's AI? If I use an AI picture enhancer on the thumbnail of this video, is that AI or whatnot? It's just like, it can be targeted of just like, nope, we're turning off Sora for public use. That's it. Just until we decide, like, we're just not allowing hyper realistic CCTV video to be out there of real people committing crimes or something like that. It just, and then we can unwind from there. Like, let's put the cap on hyper innovation and slowly work backwards and let things move, rather than just go full steam ahead and see what happens.
Yeah. So I guess to take this whole thing full circle, because we've gone down a little bit of a tangent, you ask me like, what do you think of the concerns around platforming? And, and a similar idea is like, I think when you Voldemort something, you kind of make it more powerful. And so we've seen that with like algo speak. And so, the language of incels has sort of permeated into culture, because incels had to communicate in a savvy, innovative way to not get moderated, to get around censorship systems online. And so now we all say things like Sigma and Alpha, and, we're maxing this or that. These terms that they created, their culture became more influential because they had to design it in a way to be resilient to the mainstream. And so I think if you're in the business of trying to crush an idea, you really run the risk of actually making that idea more resistant or more influential. And I think the bigger task that we have right now is this algorithmic reality. And there's only so many people who have access to the levers on that. But I really think directing humanity's attention towards that and being a little bit less petty and laterally judgmental towards like, why are you talking to so-and-so? How dare you talk to that person who said that? That's just not going to get you anywhere. And that in and of itself just feeds the beast. And so I'm interested in kind of like exploring like, okay, what are these principles that are shaping our interactions? But, that's a hope and a prayer. I'm also kind of aware that there's a chance like those conversations and that kind of constitutional convention may likely never happen, or it'll happen much further down the road.
Well, like I said, I think we need a diversity of personalities who are advocating, sort of like on the on the hyper agreeable end, you need those people contributing to the discourse, and you need the disagreeable people. It's sort of like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I mean, I don't know enough about the details of to go deep into like an analysis of their philosophies, but generally speaking, like both were advocating for stopping black people from getting oppressed. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, who was right? It's like, well, maybe Martin Luther King was necessary to appeal to the people who are higher in agreeableness, and Malcolm X was necessary to appeal to the people who are high in disagreeableness. They're just two figures appealing to two different personality types, but you need both, right? And I think that's where people like you and Lex Friedman come in as the kumbaya, and we need to understand people and all that, which I agree with too, and there's a big part of me. But my biggest problem is I change my mind a lot. Biggest problem and advantage. Biggest problem and advantage.
I think that's a great quality.
Yes, it can be positive and negative. But yeah, like that's what I'm talking about, like the friend enemy distinction, and like, well, we need to win and not just be principled and all that. Like, I do see that. I used to be much more Jordan Peterson gave 12 rules and these are the 12 rules, and now it's like,
yeah,
there's leeway here.
Well, the thing I love about Jordan Peterson that I think he deserves a lot of credit for is his sincerity. Jordan Peterson has always been serious about his ideas, and as far as I can tell, like, he never kind of evolved into a troll persona. Like, Jordan Peterson became the cultural force that he was because he truly believed in kind of the values and virtues he was preaching. And so, when I see things like Trump kind of, throwing poop from the plane, the AI slop of dropping the poop bomb, it's like peak irony poisoning. Like, yeah. Okay, and so if that's the norm right now, and like, Trump's a complex figure, we could talk about him all day, and there's things he's done that I think he deserves credit for. There's a lot of things he's done that that concern me culturally, but if he kind of has become the troll commander in chief, that opens the door for kind of a more extreme form of sincerity to exist in a public official. That's a hard thing to do. I think a lot of people, and I don't think it's like the old-fashioned politician approach either. Obama was maybe this last kind of buttoned-up, polished politician, and a lot of the reaction that we've seen to him was a lot of people felt that he was kind of phony. Like, he was like, it was all a little too dialed in and performative. And so maybe we could have an interesting moment where a political figure enters the scene that is shockingly and disarmingly sincere. And that doesn't mean that they have to be a pushover. They will have to draw the line around certain moral questions. They will still have the military at their, to yield as they see fit and to use violence when necessary. But that doesn't mean that they have to be overly guarded and callous, or be posting memes all the time to show, like, I don't give a fuck.
I think that's a return to sincerity. That's the only way to compete in the hyper-ironic, irony-poisoned realm. I agree. All right, John.
Well, Paul, are you satisfied?
I'm very satisfied. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Let's do it again. It was great chatting with you.
For sure.